I've got to tell you, I am shocked, angry and disgusted at what just happened to me. Don't know if it's ever happened to you. I just went into Aldi's and they don't sell quinoa. Ridiculous, I know. I mean, they got rice, pasta, not quinoa. What do they think we are, savages out here? Never again when I go in there. Hello all, happy Friday to you. I've just been out and about looking at work today, so nothing to film work-wise. But just get over because there's a big lorry joining the carriageway. A couple of you have mentioned, I'll start it again. A couple of you have mentioned in the past that you like hearing some old stories and work stories and things like that. And I'm glad they're entertaining for you to listen to because, you know, sometimes it's nice to have someone to share it with, really. Someone that knows these things. Someone that's been in the trade and can appreciate how these stories pan out, really. So I've got a couple more, and they involve, two of them involve one plumber, and the second one involves another plumber. Because I think if you're going to have disasters at work, there's got to be a plumber involved, surely. You know, you can't really have a disaster as a plasterer or a bricklayer or a tiler so much, but when there's water or electrics involved, there's disaster waiting to happen. And the beauty of it is, I've got a smirk on my face already, because I'm not a plumber and I was only there to witness it. It makes it hilarious because I didn't have to take any of that guilt home with me or fix anything. So there was this young plumber, and I think his name was Kevin. And this is, I'm not embellishing these stories, I'll tell you them like they appear in my head. I'm not trying to make him any better for content and, you know, to try and impress anyone. I'm just saying them how I remember them. And there was this young plumber called Kevin, a bit younger than me at the time, and he had anxiety issues, and he used to take them tablets, you know, they're called Calms, K-A-L-M-S, I think. He was always taking these Calms because he had such anxiety about plumbing. I mean, what a job to be in. If you're anxious, I mean, sometimes I get anxious when I'm going to plaster a big ceiling. I can feel a bit of anxiety kicking up at me. But you always get it done. But as a plumber, you must be absolutely heart pounding out of your chest if you've got anxiety issues when you decide to be a plumber. Maybe being a plumber causes them anxiety issues. Maybe it's that psychology. But anyway, so old Kevin, young Kevin, he always had really rosy red cheeks, like he was flushed, always itchy, always like one of them jittery sort of bloke, never stood still. We had a little job to do up in an auction house, which was over at, I think it was Wood Green or Bounds Green. We had to go in there. I can't remember what I was doing in there. I think Kevin had to sort out a water pipe or something, and maybe I was there to uncover the water pipe and make good after, probably something like that. But anyway, we went in there and we went upstairs in this auction room, and we was in the bit of the auction room where they were displaying everything that was going to be on auction, I suppose, and the offices were downstairs. So we're rummaging, you know, having a look at stuff like you do. We was only in our early 20s, so you're looking at things. and Kevin, old anxious Kevin, has picked up like a blunderbuss. If you don't know what it is, it's like an old shotgun, but at the end of it looks like a trumpet. It's called a blunderbuss. And Kevin's then turned around, and we're only young, so of course he's pointed it at me. And I'm like, leave off, Kev. Like, I didn't want it pointed at me. I said, leave off, Kev. I'll put it down. Of course we're laughing. And then the idiot pulls the trigger, right? And this is no word of a lie. He pulls the trigger. And Jesus Christ, this bang, like an explosion happened, right? I thought I'd been shot. I really thought I'd been shot. Lucky enough, obviously, it turns out there was a blank in this thing. And gee, fuck, well, I'm going to swear it. The staff from downstairs come, well, 2 or 3 of the staff, like the senior staff, I would imagine, old grey-haired boy, come running upstairs. What on earth has gone on? What are you two doing up here? We're standing there. I'm in shock, thinking I've been shot. Kevin's standing there with his blunderbuss in his hand. And I'll tell you what, it was looking back now, it's hilarious. But at the time, like our faces were just bright red. He had a right gas, this old boy, you can imagine. You're not allowed to touch any of this stuff. He went right into one like a school teacher before I was at school again. But yeah, that was one incident with Kevin. And then the second incident with Kevin, was it Kevin? No, sorry. This second incident wasn't Kevin. This was another plumber called Steve. Similar age, not long out of plumbing college, I would imagine. We was working in a pub down at King's Cross, just off York Way at King's Cross, if you know the area. There was an old pub down there, it's probably gone now. But it was an old 3-storey high pub, very, living quarters at the top. I think there was living quarters in the middle, and then there was the pub downstairs. There was another bunch of subbies that was in there, and they were completely redoing the whole of the top floor. And they were trying to take the toilet out, and there was a little toilet on this top floor, and all of the floor underneath it was completely rotten, but it just got wet over the years. So these guys had taken out most of the floor, which then you could see down to the middle level of the living quarters. But they needed the toilet taken out so they could strip the rest of the floor out. So I'd been sent over there to give Steve a hand, not Kevin, to give Steve a hand. And he was working over at King's Cross Station at that time, because we used to do a lot of station work as well. So Steve was over at King's Cross Station, I'd gone down to the pub. So I met Steve there, told him what's going on. Right, Steve, we've got to get the toilet out, got to take the cistern off the wall, because the guys would rip up the rest of the floor. This was an old pub, and trying to trace a stopcock, you can imagine 3 levels of an old pub. You couldn't find the stopcock anywhere. You couldn't just turn off the one downstairs because it would knock the pub out. So Steve, being a decent sort of bloke, he said I'll do it live, right? Them words haunt me. I'll do it live. Why would you want to do it live? Just tell them you can't do it and you can't find a stopcock. He went, I'll do it live. I said, you sure, Steve? Because I'm not a plumber, but I know enough to know that that's a recipe for aggro, that is. He went, no, I'll do it live. So Steve undone the feed to this toilet system, and I tell you what, I've never seen water pressure like it. You'd think on the first floor of a pub you might just get a dribble out of it. I'm sure that's what he thought, but it was like mains, proper mains pressure. This thing come roaring out. Now Steve, in his panicky wisdom, decided that he was going to hammer that pipe shut, copper pipe. He was going to hammer it shut. So of course he's hit it. Well, all it's done is crushed the middle of the pipe. So now you've got two. Now you've got 2 jet streams coming out of the thing, right? And within seconds, he is absolutely covered. I've done my usual, just took a step back because I know I'm going to get soaking wet, and I'm no help in that situation. You know, I'm a bag full of nerves as well. It's not worth me getting involved, trying to put my head in the way and saying, what should we do? So Steve's soaking wet, and this went on. Do you know what? I don't know how we got the water turned off. I'll tell you that now. I don't know how we got the water turned off, but we did. There was obviously a stopcock somewhere. Had he have asked at the beginning of the job, maybe we would have been told where a stopcock was, but he didn't. So of course the floor underneath that toilet had been taken out because it was down to the middle living quarters, and then underneath that was the pub. So after a few minutes of this pipe roaring out, I kid you not, the living quarters, it was running down the wall. It looked like a waterfall. You know, in some of these posh restaurants and they have like water coming down the walls, like some fake waterfall. That was going on in the middle floor, and then down in the pub, it was over the fruit machines, it was all over the bar. King's Cross, I mean, this was like midday, but any time of day in King's Cross, that pub is full of boozers. All the old boys in there having their drinks. We had to get dust sheets and whatever we could get and just chuck them over the bloody fruit machines and everything like that. And in the end, we got it turned off, and Steve did what he had to do, which was just literally disconnect the thing. And I'll never forget, as he walked back over to King's Cross Station, I watched him. His head was down. He was a broken man. It had done him. It had absolutely done him, and I bet it haunts him to this day, that one. But he'll have learned a valuable lesson there. You don't ever do anything live unless you, well, I wouldn't do anything live, but unless you're guaranteed to know that there's maybe a trickle coming out of that, don't do it. And then a similar thing happened in a railway station in think it might have been Billericay, somewhere out on that line, on the Billericay Romford line. Yeah. We had to do, what did we have to do? We had to alter some pipe work up in the loft above the ticket office. And this was an old boy, Jim, lovely old boy, good plumber, knew everything, like them old boys from them old school days did. There wasn't any situation they couldn't get you out of, really. Head full of knowledge. And me and Jim was up in this loft, and we'd done the pipe work for whatever we had to do. And I noticed on the galvanised water tank, I noticed that there, where the feed was, the feed again, I noticed there was a little drip coming down. And I said, Jim, that feed's leaking a bit, like the ball valve bit, that's leaking. And Jim was lovely, old boy. He said, don't worry. He said, don't worry, very happy Jim man. Don't worry, I'll sort that out of my spanners. And he put his spanners on this thing, and he didn't even give it a quarter turn, and the whole thing just crumbled. The galvanised, I don't know, whatever it was, he just went. And that was the same, just a torrent of like powerful pressure right above the ticket office. And again, completely flooded the ticket office. Jim was in a panic, covered in water, with his glasses on, face full of water, absolutely covered in it. And he's like, run out, go and get an aquavac. So I had to go and find a HSS hire, because that was where we had accounts with, and hire of an aquavac. So you can imagine how long, by the time I got back, how much water had been coming down in that ticket office. They had to shut the ticket office down, and I had to go in there and vacuum it up. But inside, I'm pissing myself laughing, because there's part of you thinks, thank God it weren't me. Thank God that wasn't my mistake. And I probably broke old Jim actually. Again, got the water turned off. There was probably a valve up there somewhere, which Jim found. But again, so just a word of warning really to anyone that comes into contact with what looks to be a simple fix with water. Don't ever do it unless that water's turned off. And you know that water's turned off. Try the tap, try the pipe, just crank it a little bit before you take the radiator off. Anything, just that would be my advice to anyone, because we've all probably done it, and we're all probably going to do it, because sometimes when you're in a situation where you need to get out quick, like it's like Friday afternoon, or you ain't got time on that job, you've only allowed a day, you've got to cut corners like that. I don't touch much plumbing anymore. I used to take radiators off when I was plastering. I'd be that guy, yeah, I could take them off, and then go home and think, why did I say that? I can't, I'm not a plumber. I've got certain tools I've got on the van. I've got bits and pieces. I've got a little box with some plumbing bits in it, a few fittings, a bit of PTFE. But I haven't got fittings to get me out of trouble if it all, push comes to shove. And I've had that before. I've put radiators on, and then there's a little weep, and then you're there for another 2 hours trying to sort this weep out. You think, why did I say that I was going to touch these radiators? Just tell them to get a plumber in. So that's another bit of advice for any of you guys out there that might be starting to plaster, and you want to please the customers. You don't want to disappoint them by saying, I can't plaster behind the radiator, you're going to need to get a plumber in, and then they look at you blank and say, oh, do you know any? Just, if you know one, obviously tell them, but if you don't, say no, but I can't plaster behind that radiator without a qualified plumber taking it off. Because you might do 50 radiators that all go back on lovely, and then you might do one that is disaster, floods the house out, and then you've got to claim on insurance if you've got it, and if you haven't got insurance, good luck to you. I mean, I don't even take them radiators off on these new houses now. These ones that got these real little flexi marker board pipes coming up, where you can supposedly just lift the radiator off and lay it down. I won't do that. I will not chance it, because it's not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed that you lift that radiator up and the fitting don't pop off. And I haven't got any fittings for that size, whatever that is, 10 mil is it? I don't want to go near it. So yeah, so that's a couple more stories. I'm talking about people pointing guns at you. This is another story, very true, not just making it up at all. I was working over at Cricklewood in the house, and the entrance to the house was at the side. You had to sort of go down the side of the house, and unbeknown to me, while I'm working in the house, there was a siege going on in that road, an armed siege. So there was a lot of armed police turned up, and they was hanging about outside. Obviously, something big had gone on. So I've walked out the front door, finished, and I had my plaster whisk with me. Because it was an alley, I was carrying my plaster whisk. For some reason, I was carrying it sort of like, so I was like a Dalek. So the whisk was in front of me, because I was obviously getting through the gate or something, like carrying it whisk forward. And as I got out into the road, there was an armed copper. He turned around with his gun, pointed the gun at me, and we just made eye contact, and I just froze. I absolutely shit myself. And he had obviously the skill, the knowledge not to panic. He said exactly that I was just a guy working, and he sort of looked at me, I looked at him, and he sort of gave it the old, he turned back around again, because he's obviously there waiting for someone to potentially come at him or come out with a gun. So that was a close call. I'll never forget that. Something I've never had before, obviously. I've never had anyone point a gun at me before, let alone a big bloody machine gun, whatever you had in there. So I didn't fill my pants up, kept it strong, it was good. Yeah, so that scared the life out of me. But other disasters, I've seen things happen. I've seen blokes using a digger, again on the railways, what we used to do under the arches. That was in East London. We was doing a lot of work under the arches, the old brickwork arches, converted them into more sort of like nicer business units for different things. And there was a couple of guys using a digger under there, and they went under, would it be like a mains cable, like 3-phase? I don't really understand all that. But it blew the bucket off. There was a big flash, and it literally blew the bucket off the digger off. I think he was alright, the guy in it, because he was obviously must have been insulated somehow. So you do see these things over the years. We used to do a lot of different work on that firm, and we used to do a lot of railway maintenance. So there was potential for things to go wrong. We had to do all the stuff like learn how to walk along railway tracks, learn what to do if someone got electrocuted, how to get them off of a track, how to step over live tracks, how far you could work away from the overhead rails. Lots and lots of health and safety, obviously, on the railways. And you did hear that people have been killed and stuff like that. Because they used to tell you that when you used to go and do your track safety course, PTS it was called, personal track safety. They always hit you with a story that's going to shock you a bit. These poor blokes working on the railway line, and they didn't hear something coming down the line. Because that's why, if you're ever on a train and you drive through a train station and you see blokes working, they always look like they're doing nothing. They're always standing on the shovel, leaning on the shovel. Because that's what you have to do. You cannot carry on working while the trains, because they've probably been told to stand back. Because what will happen is, depending on how the line runs, if the line's got a big bend in it, you'll have a couple of lookouts. You might even have detonators on the track. Sometimes you might hear like explosions along the side of a railway track. What they are is you get these detonators, and they fold over the track with these little lead clips, and as the train goes over them, it sends a detonator off. Now you place them, I think, like a mile up the track. If you can't got vision of sight, you'll place them up, and then when you hear that detonator go off, then the lookout will usually blow like a horn, like the old Vuvuzela. They'll blow that, and then the person in charge of works will sort of signal to him, and then they'll give you a tap on the shoulder to stand back, because there's a train coming. So obviously you stand back then. So that's why when you see these blokes on the railway, you say, lazy sods, they ain't doing nothing. They've probably been told to stand back. Quite a sort of interesting safety regime, really. And if you follow it, it's pretty fail-safe, really. And it's when you take chances, is when you're going to get unstuck, really. And people do take chances on the railway. If you've got to get gear from this side of the track to that side of the track, and you're meant to be going along the platform, up and over a bridge, back down, a lot of the time, if you're doing like something at night, you're just going to take the easy route. You're going to say, sod down, I'm going to walk 10 foot across the other side of the track. And then, this is how accidents happen. But generally, it's all worked out that as long as you follow it, it's all safe, really. But it's not a world I'm in anymore. It used to drive me a little bit mad, that sort of thing, because There was so much health and safety. Basically, every time you did a job, any job on the railway, even if it was unblocking the toilet, the paperwork was just incredible. You had to do a risk assessment before you started the work. Then you had to do a job sheet. Then once the job was done, you had to do a completion certificate. So there's 3 bits of paper to fill out and get signed for one job. Now sometimes on some of the biggest railway stations, so like say King's Cross, Euston, Liverpool Street, instead of sending you down there for one job, they might give you 7 jobs. You know, only little things, fix this, fix that, unblock this. So straight away with 7 jobs, that creates 21 sheets of paperwork, and you've got to get the duty manager at the end of the day. And this is only you, there might be other blokes working there doing other things. You've got to get a duty manager to sign 21 sheets of paperwork. It used to be horrendous really. So obviously you could be in quite a queue getting all that signed up. But yeah, anyway, just a couple more stories of the past. If I think of any more, I'll let you know, but they're 3 that spring to mind. I'm sure there's loads, but whether they're worth saying or not, I don't know. But touch wood, I've never really seen anyone get hurt. I wouldn't want to have seen anything like that. Oh, I cut my thumb years ago. Talking about getting hurt, my thumb's all weird. Look, that's why I'm such a bad plasterer. Actually, no, it's the other end. That thumb is knackered. I nearly went through it with a pallet truck when I used to work at Tesco's when I was a kid. Shouldn't have been on the pallet truck, but manager said, yeah, you can use it, and then I had an accident on it with no training. So that thumb doesn't bend any more than that. Yeah, that wasn't nice. I was only 15 or 16, I think, when it happened. Yeah, so that thumb still works, as long as you can do that, it's alright. But it gets numb in the winter, it gets colder in the winter. You don't think of all that when you're young, you're just walking about with a badge of honour on, you know. You've got your arm in plaster, you've got stitches in it, you think you're top man, don't you? I'd rather have my normal thumb back. Because yeah, it does get a bit uncomfortable at times really. But it does that anyway, but enough about that. So, I hope you've enjoyed some of these little stories. And if any of you have got stories, get a little YouTube video up and tell them. It's good fun. Once you get past the bit of seeing yourself on YouTube, which is a bit daunting at first when you put YouTube on and there you are appearing. If you've got something to say or you think we'd all be interested in it doesn't have to be about plastering, it can be about anything really. I highly advise anyone to get on there, see if you can have a bit of fun doing it. Anyway, it's Friday afternoon and I'm nearly home, so have a good night. I'll see you Monday hopefully.